Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Pause and Pivot, our weekly cafecito chat where we explore the science and soul of meaningful living through books, conversation, and community. Whether you're joining us live or catching the replay on YouTube, we're so glad that you're here. My name is Margarita V, and I'm a leadership and mental fitness strategist, national board certified health and well-being coach, and a lifelong student of human flourishing. And one of the things I love most about bringing people together around great books and meaningful conversations is that each week we gather not as experts, but as fellow learners, exploring ideas that can help us live with greater awareness, vitality, purpose, and connection. So each month we invite you to join us as we focus on a new theme and explore a series of books that help us better understand ourselves, how we relate to others, and how we can live with greater vitality, awareness, maybe discovering meaning and ways for us to personally flourish. So welcome to this month. This month, our focus is joy, vitality, and living fully. Last week, if you joined us, we began our journey with Eat, Move, Sleep by Tom Rath, one of our new favorite books, where we explored how small daily choices around food, movement, and sleep shape energy and well-being, especially when they're put together, right? We discovered that last week. So every day we're making energy decisions. Some create tomorrow's energy and some borrow from tomorrow's energy. So this week we expand that conversation because while our personal habits matter, another question emerges. What role do community, environment, and purpose play in helping us live longer, healthier, and happier lives? So those are some of the questions that Dan Buettner set out to explore in today's book, The Blue Zones. Oh my gosh, such a beautiful coffee table book with so much depth and research as well. So we'll explore this more through his years of research and travel. Dan studied communities around the world where people routinely live into their 90s and 100s while maintaining health, connection, and a strong sense of purpose. And what he discovered was surprising. I can't wait to dive into more of the details. So today we're going to explore what those communities can teach us and what lessons might apply to our own lives. But before we begin, if you enjoy thoughtful conversations about books, well-being, flourishing, leadership, and conscious living, we'd love for you to subscribe and like our YouTube channel. Please share these conversations with others and consider joining us each week. Our goal isn't simply to read more books. It's to discover one small idea, one new perspective, or an intentional action that might help us move forward with greater joy, vitality, and meaning. And with that, I'd love to welcome our Cafecito Chat friends and co-hosts for today. So what are you guys feeling? Where's your energy level as we're moving into this joy, energy, and vitality for June? As we talked about, last month, Eat, Move, Sleep. That was an amazing book. Don't you think, Colin?
Absolutely. I loved how it helped me begin to look at the three as an integrated process, and that the processes, when they're integrated consciously, like you said, we're either going to add to our energy tomorrow or steal from our energy tomorrow. And it's strange because I've not really ever thought of what I'm doing today as, it makes sense. It just naturally makes sense. But I can say that I haven't considered my actions today and what they might affect me as quickly as tomorrow. We always know what I do today is going to affect the future, but really affect tomorrow energetically. So
I remember that was just such an incredible insight. And I love how we're carrying that forward, right? So now we've got that idea, those insights from last week. And so as we move into this week's book, The Blue Zones, I'm really excited to get into some of the big ideas around communities around the world and the concept of bringing that home to us in our own community. So any initial thoughts that are coming up for you guys about this book, or what you're most curious to dive into for today?
my wife and I watched the special.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was an HBO documentary on the
Yep.
Blue Zones.
Mm-hmm.
And ever since I watched it kind of stuck with me. But I loved what you were able to pull out for us prior is the fact that it's an ecology.
Yes.
That each of these groups are not waking up every day going, "Oh my God, I want to live a long time." They're just living their lives and it's happening. And I think that's one of the most cool things about this process that I'm excited about.
Boom, you just hit the biggest idea. We can go home now because that's really the main thing. Like, guys, we don't have to go to Okinawa. We don't have to go to, Icarus. We can stay home and build our own communities. So I love that. That really is the central theme and the hope, the message of hope that we can bring to our homes, communities as we go forward. So here in Cafecito Chat, we're just going to review the book real quick, introduce you to the author and why this book matters, why we're discussing it today. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look. Today's book is The Blue Zones, Lessons for Living Longer and Better by Dan Buettner. So while longevity is part of the story, what really captured my attention in this book isn't ultimately about just adding years to life. It's about creating lives worth living. So as a reminder, this month for June, we're looking at our exploration of books around the theme joy, vitality, and living fully. Last week, we reviewed Eat, Move, Sleep. Today, we're focusing on the Blue Zones. And join us next week for our updated book, which is going to be The How of Happiness by Sonia Lyubomirsky. And we're going to wrap up this month with Flow, an absolute classic by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. And I think that's how you say it. I'm not sure. But that's our June exploration. And today, folks, we're going to look at the Blue Zones. So this amazing book, again, as I said, is a beautiful coffee table book, but don't get fooled. It's chock full of amazing research. And, before we dive into some of the big ideas, I want to give you a real quick overview of the book itself. Because like we said, we don't expect you to read all these books, but maybe get excited about one book to read this whole year or this month. So this book, The Blue Zones, was originally published in 2008. And it's approximately 320 pages. And it took me, about, 5-6 days to read it, 30 to an hour to an hour and a half a day. So it took me about, 1, 2, 3, almost 4.5 hours. So it's a real quick read. And what I found was so fun was you could read one section, you travel to one country, and then you can discuss it around the dinner table. So a 30-minute read and you can get exposed to how one community lives. So it's a wonderful way to read a book and share it with others. So for me, it was a wonderful way to slow down every night and just dive into a different community. And what I especially appreciated about this book is that it isn't simply a travel log about the unusual places where people live a long time. The book is organized into several distinct sections. So he talks about extraordinary longevity. Of course, he's focused on thriving instead of disease, right? He introduces the Blue Zones, the communities around the world, and he shares the stories and customs and daily lives of the people who live there. And he goes through all the different areas and they identified the common lifestyle patterns. And it was so fascinating to see because no matter how differently the people lived and how they flourished in their own ways, what surprised me is he started to explore purpose, belonging, and environment, and that the second part of the book really focused on not the differences of the communities, but what they all had in common. And so Buettner asks, what can we learn from these communities? And perhaps more importantly, how can we bring these lessons into our own neighborhoods, workplaces, schools, and cities? And the final chapter, that is worth getting the whole book by itself. It introduces what became known as the Blue Zones Project and the Power 9. So he identified 9 common lifestyle factors shared across these remarkably healthy communities. And if you stay till the end, you're going to get a snapshot of some tips. So hold on to the end and you'll get to take home some 9 common suggestions that he gathered from all of these blue zones around the world. So this isn't just a book about longevity. It's really a book about designing environments where health, happiness, connection, and purpose naturally come and arise in our daily living. And that's really what makes it so relevant today. So funny thing before I get onto the author is as I was reading it, we'll get into the Singapore area maybe. Singapore is the newest blue zone, but I was so inspired, you guys. I literally put the book down and I ran and I told Jim, we're going to go to Singapore and we're going to go study how they live. And I want to go to this one hospital and just see how they just make this hospital feel like a spa. And you're walking into this health spa and not a sick white building. So anyway, I hope that piques your curiosity into diving into this book. So let's go ahead and dive into the author, Dan Buettner. So he combines the curiosity of an explorer with the rigor of a researcher. He was a National Geographic Fellow, and he got to travel around the world researching the places where exceptional health was common rather than rare. What began as research eventually became the Blue Zones Project. He worked with a lot of researchers, scientists, and collaborated with many leaders in many different nations to help to understand why communities they thrived and how people began to redesign environments to support well-being. His most important insight, you guys, even though he looked at studying longevity, the hotspots around the world, and how governments were helping communities to redesign themselves, he said, the healthiest people weren't trying to live longer. Longevity emerged naturally from how they lived. Boom. That's it, right? And Colin already alluded to it. I mean, that is the ticket right there. It's not trying to live or hacking or the latest, habit stacking. It's a lot of the secrets to just living every day. So our environments, the people around us, our culture, our customs, all of it gets mixed into that soup. So let's now move into real quick why this book matters. And guys, this is it. We're living through a fascinating paradox, honestly. Here in the US, now if you're joining from around the world, these figures may not match your experience, but did you know, and I just looked it up, from 2025, the US now spends more than $5.3 trillion on healthcare, folks. This is 18% of our GDP. We're not making manufacturing. We're not producing anything. We're producing sick society. And we're putting a lot of our money, a lot of our aches and pains and suffering, giving up our well-being. So I really want to put this out there to say why this book matters and why we're looking at other nations which are not as developed as we are. Because here in the US, approximately 6 in 10 adults live with at least one chronic disease. And guess what? About 4 in 10 live with 2 or more chronic diseases. And folks, that's just not okay. We got to do something, right? And before we approach our more senior ages, what can we do? And guess what? As much as we're spending all this money on health care, life expectancy is declining. Chronic diseases are rising. Loneliness is increasing and happiness has continued to decline. So Buettner poses the real question. He invites us to stop asking how individuals can try harder and start asking how communities can make healthier living easier. Let's just let that sit. It's not about us trying harder, having more willpower, having better habits. If our environments and our cultures and our people around us are an impediment to living healthy. There's so many big ideas right there. Let me just pause and come back and see what everybody has to share on just the book, the author, and some of why this book matters. So guys, what do you think? That was a lot to take in, communities around the world thriving, and then boom, we're spending literally almost 20% of our GDP on sick care. And that's not taking into account complementary or alternative care. You know, if you're going to a chiropractor, if you're going to a naturopath that doesn't take insurance, that's right out of your pocket. So anyway, I get pretty serious here.
Well, you should. Frankly, those numbers are staggering. I did not. I mean, seriously, 5 trillion. It's nutty. That's nutty.
Well, that's why American College of Lifestyle Medicine has been leading the nation and the world for about the last 15 years to educate physicians, healthcare professionals, and people like me, coaches, who are now connecting the basic health and wellness pillars to understand how we can get healthy and work with our providers to stay healthy. So there is that movement. So have hope. There are practitioners out there that will write a prescription, right? For eating better, sleeping better, and connecting more. But, you know, now there's us. How are we as a factor in all of this contributing to what we're spending in health and how we're flourishing or not?
The only thing I really would say in response to what you've presented so far is that having watched the documentary, having looked at the review that you've put out, the one thing that sticks out to me is not hardly any of those people access modern medicine very frequently. Very few of them. In fact, Okinawa and is it Italian? You named it. Starts with an I.
Korea.
Yeah, Korea. Is that Greece or
Greece? Yep.
It's Greece. Neither one of them have what you would call a modern healthcare system.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they have access to emergency and stuff, but very few of them are in a place that they're going to get modern prescriptions, you know, assigned to them frequently.
Yeah.
And I found that to be really interesting, that it's a lifestyle. You know, that's the thing that I have a sense of.
You're right to highlight that, Colin. And most of these blue zones, guess what, are passing on ancient practices, right, from their communities. And most of them are isolated, either islands or hard to get to, you know, except for Singapore. And that's an interesting one. But we'll get to that, hopefully, in our discussion.
Well, the Loma Linda population is in the, you know, it's in a very, very urban area, but that the foundational community was from a religion in which they adopted similar lifestyles, but had strong community that they leaned into.
Absolutely. I mean, literally, we can go through each one and just point out the amazing things and the connections, right, that he's focusing on. So faith-based culture and understanding of the values, living values, and how people connect and support each other, right? Contribute to our impact. And so that's huge with Loma Linda. Mm-hmm.
I think from an anthropological lens, which I can't help but bring in, you know, we're essentially talking about communities that are not necessarily individual goal driven, right? And I think, you know, moving that place value of individual goals and then, you know, goal oriented, goal obsessed, you know,
Yeah.
I think that's the other really telling, you know, sign that, you know, we're talking about communities that have, an ancient template.
Yeah.
That's, you know, foolproof. And these are enriching environments that are nurturing communities, not necessarily the individual goal, but, you know, again, and then going to Maslow's, you know, I'm not even just I was just thinking about Maslow's meta motivation. And that meta motivation is really about the collective goal, right? And then that, really fosters communitas, this collective experience. And when you're experiencing, you know, health collectively, there's greater good, just greater good. So yeah, it's really amazing.
No doubt. No doubt. And thank you for bringing your anthropological lens. Oh my God. Urchana is in the house. So, Urchana, I listened to a call yesterday with Dr. Liana Leonov with ACLM in one of their groups, and they presented a talk on meaning, purpose, and spirituality in healthcare and the benefit and the impact of it. So it was really great timing. And one concept that came up by Dr. Mark Brahman was he brought up the lens with which a lot of these research projects are done in healthcare and in science, and he calls it WEIRD, WERRD. I forgot the D, but anyway, it's Western, educated, independent, rich, and democratic. Democratic is the D. So folks, it's like, that's why we're here, because each of us brings a different lens, a different, educated perspective of how to look at things and understand ourselves and our communities. And so when we're aware that the foundations of how our culture, our healthcare, our practices differ in other countries and how it shows up here, it's really important to understand who gets to decide, how things happen or how we perceive them. We always talk about perspective here. All of that to say is I'm so glad you're here. Let me go ahead and dive into the big three ideas, because again, we could go through all of the blue zones and talk about the ins and outs, but we're just going to highlight three ideas that are kind of a little different than maybe you would have normally heard them. So for this book, The Blue Zones, some of the ideas we're going to look at in our discussions are health happens in community, as we've just been saying, and we'll go into that. And then another idea is environment is stronger than willpower. I think that's really important with all of the diets and programs and everything that we're trying to do, and maybe how we feel when we're not able to sustain that level of health for ourselves, right? Number three is we're going to look at purpose and how it's viewed in the different communities, and how purpose creates a life worth living. So the underlying question is, how can we design lives where health happens naturally? So with that, let's go into our first big idea. Health happens in community. So when we're talking about this, we're looking at, of course, the strong relationships and all the science that surrounds this, and how connection improves health. It's one of the strongest findings in modern health research is that relationships matter. And as we've talked before in the ACLM, one of their updated health pillars is connection, both horizontal with ourselves and our communities, and then what they refer to as vertical connection to a higher sense of calling, whether it's God or a light or our better self. So even in the medical field, we're starting to look at that. And, there's a large study involving more than 300,000 people found that individuals with strong social relationships had approximately a 50% greater likelihood of survival than those who were socially isolated. And so this was around the world, right? And that's just remarkable that family remains central, crucial in every blue zone. And then getting this idea of a sense of belonging, that's really, really common. You see that out there in all the social media, looking and searching for, where we can show up as ourselves authentically. The importance of that, and how research shows belonging helps to reduce stress. And that through shared meals become rituals of connection in many of these communities. And one of the most beautiful things, you guys, from this concept that health happens in communities is how some of these communities treat their elders. In some communities, the elders remain integrated into the community life rather than pushed aside and isolated from it. Elders are actually respected and included. So perhaps one of the most important questions from this section is, who helps you flourish? So Dan says, The world's longest lived people don't pursue health. Health emerges from the way they live. Amazing. Such a different perspective, such a different focus. And, we encourage you to write down some ideas, what's landing with you. We encourage you to reflect. So we ask here, what if well-being is something we cultivate rather than chase? How does that change our approach to our daily habits and perhaps to what kind of goals we might be setting for ourselves? Some of these ideas. Perhaps well-being isn't something we chase, you guys. Perhaps it's something we cultivate. What's coming up for you?
Well, for me, as soon as I was looking at what you sent through in anticipation of the call, immediately, because recently I went into a little bit of a deep dive with the Harvard study of 1938. I'm sure you've heard of it. It started out with a study of two groups of humans, the sophomore class of Harvard in 1938 and underprivileged young men in Boston in 1938. And it's the longest continuing study in history, I don't know if the world, but definitely of America. Mm-hmm. And the one thing it came down to, it wasn't money, it wasn't status, it wasn't what the one predictor of health and happiness was health to relationships. It didn't matter if you were an underprivileged a boy from Boston or a sophomore from a highly privileged family at Harvard. What was going to, and it says that it's carried down through 4 generations now. 4 generations of humans have been proving this out again and again and again. The same thing that the Blue Zone study is nailing, and that is relationships, meaning provides an environment, an ecology in which humans thrive.
Yep. Yeah, that is the longest longitudinal study, very famous. Thank you for bringing that up.
If this is about relationships, underlying all that is reliance, right? You can rely on people, count on people, reliance. Well, our culture, American culture, promotes self-reliance, which competes, if you think about it, with relationships from its very foundation. And then we're just chasing self-reliance because, we're entrepreneurial, we're self-reliant, so that hustle culture, all of that. I think, it's a competitive, just framework. So, and it's definitely for myself, it's making me reflect a lot. I've just really been contemplating, that goal-oriented self-reliance. How sustainable is that?
Yeah. And it's interesting. Our nation is still fairly young. We're going to celebrate 250 years this year, I guess, or next year, this year. And we're still baby. We're still a baby nation. And on top of that, you guys, how many cultures have come here and brought their culture and are striving to create and bring those traditions here? How easy is it for them to do so? I know a lot of my friends who are from India, and they bring their culture and they form a culture here. I mean, it's like a community zone, right? Their food and their culture and their dress and their religious celebrations. And it's such a beautiful thing to witness. And if we look at the Loma Linda as a blue zone, right? That is the Adventist, the Seventh-day Adventist. One of the first, in that area. When did it start? It was like in the, when was it? It was like, was it in the 1700s or the 1800s? Well, I'll look at it. But anyway, it started there. So that is based on a community. It is possible. And the question is, though, do we have to restrict it to a physical location? And that's where I feel we can bring so much hope and so much ability for us to step in as solution providers and innovators in how to live better in America. Like ACLM, again, they are now certifying physicians. Okay, all my friends, all my physician doctors, You can become board certified in lifestyle medicine. So now you can write prescriptions for healthy living. In addition, you can get Blue Zone certified as a physician. How about that, my friends? If your hospital has a Blue Zone certified physician in your community, who are you going to go to for natural, whole person healthcare? I mean, doesn't that just make you feel hopeful?
It absolutely does. I think it's interesting that you point out, just real quick while you were chatting, I Googled a couple things.
Yeah.
So the Seventh-day Adventist religion started in 1863. The organization, the Adventist leaders started or purchased the Loma Linda Hotel in 1905, sorry. So interestingly, the Okinawa and Sardinia communities have existed for centuries, but the Loma Linda group has been in existence for just a little over 100 years. So it's not about necessarily just these ancient cultures. It's the energy of community and lifestyle that I think is, well, it goes to show that that's really the big part of it, right?
Thank you for bringing that up. I forgot it was 100 years. I mean, that's serious. That's serious. I mean, if we live somewhere if we stay in a job for 2 years, that's a long time these days, right? So for something to be around for 100 years here in America, that's like noteworthy. And so another thing with the Adventists is that they started Kellogg, one of their original people there, James Kellogg, attended medical school at University of Michigan. He went on to found 168 Adventist hospitals around the world. So now they're exporting, hey, that's something positive and healthy, right? Instead of just what we're exporting as American culture, which tends to be not healthy, right? So interesting. And that leads into our big idea number 2, you guys, which is about environment. So let's go into that real quick. Idea number 2 is leading right into this discussion around environment. That environment is stronger than willpower. And I hope that really brings a sense of hope that it doesn't have to be so hard, but we have to recognize the power and the impact that our environment, our environmental cues, those people around us can have on our ability to sustain healthy choices. So this may be the most practical lesson in the entire book. When we're looking at healthy choices, how can we make them easier, right? How can we build movement into our daily life? Just like we were talking about eat, move, sleep from last week. When we look at communities, how can our community, whether it's our home, our workplace, our city, our state, or our nation, what is supporting our well-being? Researchers estimate that as much as 95% of our daily behavior is influenced by habit and environmental cues rather than by conscious decision making. 95%, my friends. So can we imagine? Healthy choices can become easier. Movement can be built into our daily life. And communities can support well-being. In contrast, right now, as Urchina was mentioning, it's like our society is kind of built for self-priority, which, might have really served us in the formation of this beautiful nation. But as we're coming together as a nation together, instead of favoring just pursuit of freedom, pursuit of liberty, and the cost that we may be paying through the convenience, because through convenience and the pursuit of just the freedom, those often work against health and ability to connect and relate with each other, right? So he points out, of course, design influences behavior. So the lesson here is simple. Design often beats discipline. And let's look around our environment. What is your environment encouraging? Health? Healthy behaviors? Or is it always a challenge? Just waking up, seeing those box of super processed cereals in our cabinets, Anyway, so let's look at a quote. If prosperity isn't producing well-being, what else could? And Dan really looked into that. How some of these countries as blue zones or some of the poorest countries, and yet they are flourishing and happy. So to reflect on this idea of our environments in our home and workplaces and communities, and how are we connecting with flourishing and abundance? For you, what does it mean when we ask what truly creates a good life? The buena vida, right? So let's circle back. What influences us more, our willpower or our environment?
It's interesting, when you say environment, and I'm just reflecting on this, as you were speaking. I think in our case, environment, I think, is a mindset. It's the environment up here. It's the framework. If the framework is a template is 9 to 5, then it's really everyone's living for the weekend. Or you think of health as like, you're like striving for saving up for that vacation where you go to this other place to breathe, to enjoy, to flourish for a limited time period where you can enjoy and be joyful. And then you come back to your, your framework, right? And that chasing, right? Again, chasing, everybody's living for the weekend. Everybody's living for that vacation. You can't wait. And, so I think that framework, that is the environment.
Yeah.
The cultural environment. Really, I think that's how I'm looking at it in our context, right? In our contemporary context.
So true. So here we take a vacation to rest, to be by the beach, right? In ancient cultures, they would take a panchakarma retreat and retreat from life to sustain and renourish and come back to life. But here's what's happening in Okinawa, my friends, as we talk about environment. It's not just that these communities are staying as blue zones. Okinawa was shocking, right? If you've looked into that. So it was where it was called the land of the immortals. And it was where they had the longest lived women on the planet with life expectancy of 87.4 years. But guess what happened? The American military came and established 30,000 U.S. military personnel and almost 25,000 family members. And over 8 decades, over that time, it has now gotten to the point where actually Okinawan men under 55 have the distinction there of being the most obese in Japan now. So environment matters, of course. And so part of the environment is who is in that, the people, the forces. Now there's Burger Kings and all these things, whereas before it wasn't. So as the environment shifted with the new culture, it's a question of how are our environments, again, sustaining our ability to make those healthier choices, or is it bringing more impediments and making it harder to stay that way?
Well, I mean, we're talking about consumption, right? And then what we're really talking about is cultural consumption.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Consumption of culture in that context. So I think that's where, that's an excellent, point. I'd forgotten that. Yeah. Starting. Alarming.
Well, I think, in your notes, Maggie, you made a statement there that it really sticks with me, and I've been thinking about it a lot, and that is your purpose, your why. Why are you getting up in them? And we've talked in some of the previous calls about the deaths of despair that are occurring in America and other places around the world. It's not just, but that point you just made about the influence of Americans in Okinawa. There's that whole part where you're like, sorry, we didn't mean to, but yeah, join the great American lifestyle over there. But yeah, it's purpose. There's a, in my opinion, so I'll just talk about my life for a minute. I mean, we take care of our 2 adult sons every day. That's what we do. That's pretty much our full-time job. And my wife has been brilliant at creating the environment that makes it easy. It's not a matter of willpower. It's not, oh, should we get up and exercise? No, we get up and we do yoga. Oh, and then we walk. And then we cook a good breakfast. And it's just what we do, you know? And the more I've been learning from you, the more I'm like, damn, I'm probably going to do okay. my wife has promoted Ikigai, or is that how you pronounce it? Ikigai? I don't know.
I think so. Ikigai.
My wife has created an environment here where we don't think about it. We just do it, you know? And she makes sure that we eat our bowl of vegetables every day. And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I'm living the American dream, but not like Americans.
It's your own Americana, right? It's your own secret system, as we learned last time, eat, move, sleep, right? Tom Rath is like, we've got to do these things to set them up so that one action supports the next healthier option, making it easier. If you wake up and everything's tripping you up, of course, it's going to tap into the sort of limited supply of what we call willpower, and everything just becomes a challenge, unnecessarily so.
Yeah, that's incredible. Sorry, Colin, that's really beautiful. That's so beautiful. And thanks for sharing that. It reminds me of when I would visit my mother's parents in India, and summers that we would go there, and it would be 2 or 3 months. And I just remember getting there and then just feeling like we're coming from New York City. And I'm just like, why is everything so slow? Why are they napping? Why is everything, and then the day just was stretched out. And I was like, is there more time in a day? Because,
oh my God, they're doing nothing.
Right? I'm just like, and we're doing nothing. Like, why are we not doing anything? And then it was, it would just drag on. And now I look back, I'm like, that was so magical because we would just, I would, there are 3 of us. So my 2 siblings and myself, and then my other cousins. And the day was it was just about playing in the sun, taking it slow, eating, vegetables. Oh my God, the way those vegetables tasted. Yeah. And then here's the interesting thing. And this is when I think of my grandparents, when we were visiting them, we would go on little pilgrimages to different temples up in the north, because they're they're like right at the foothill, like Jammu, like at the foothills of the Himalayas. So, and it's just, and they would get a driver, and we would go up these mountains to like these, amazing places. And in those mountains were priests who were sitting there, and they were basically like the keepers of like basically genetic information. So they you could go to that priest, and then they could trace your family back like 10, 15 generations.
Wow.
So you have a sense of belonging. You go on this pilgrimage and you get there, and it's not, and you see all these other people, and some people decide up to, I think, a mile away, that they just decide to walk. So you walk. You get out of the car, whatever it is. And sometimes I would see people carrying like elderly members, like, elders, like younger, and it was just something so beautiful.
Yeah.
A pilgrimage. So life centered about pilgrimages. And I remember going to the temple just when there was, sunset, and then just lighting the lanterns and just hearing bells.
Oh my gosh.
And just the simplicity of it.
Yeah.
Just the utter simplicity of it. For myself, when I go to that place mentally, like I go to that place spiritually, I have to. And so there's a part of me that's like, I think about my own children. I'm like, a pilgrimage for me now is going to the ocean. Like I go to, Dana Point or something to, that to me is like a pilgrimage, but you have to have a place to go to, and I think, and if having to do that on a daily basis, simply, right. And I'm not chasing anything. I'm just going there. Right. And I think I think that's another thing in terms of pilgrimage, purpose.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I can just imagine, even, the culture and the meaning behind that, and that you're sharing your beautiful family story. For those of us that don't have that embedded culture, lineage, or connection to ancestry, just going on a vacation, sometimes it takes 2 to 3 days just to unplug. And so one of the things I wanted to share about community is this concept called moai in Okinawa, you guys, Moai. I had never heard of it before, but they actually, when people are kids, so another cultural practice, when people are kids, the parents will sometimes sort of induct them into a circle of friends that they will then be with for the rest of their lives, or you can form your own moai. And like you said, it's like to be there, to meet each day. Like they show some pictures of some of these ladies that have been together, that are 102 years old, and they've been together for 40 or 50 years. And so the environment that can move with you, right? Those social supports. What a beautiful idea to begin to maybe consider forming our own moai here.
Well, I got to tell you, Maggie, it's funny because as I contemplated the notes and stuff, you've kind of created a little community here that is, no, seriously, it's supportive, it's loving. And Urchina, I hadn't really put two and two together until you talked about going to your homeland. But I got to tell you, and Maggie, you've been to New Zealand. New Zealand's pace of life is really chill. I mean,
chill.
Yeah, totally. And while there are challenges, for many, but you started listing down the reverence of the ancestors, the slow pace of life, the temples, and in the Maori case, the marae, the gathering place, the whare nui, the big house, the places where people go. And it's interesting. I hadn't put two and two together, but this sense of connection through ancestry, both my Maori ancestry and my Mormon ancestry, I can go back in my head. I know at least 5 or 6 generations on both sides. I can think through the names. I can think through the people and the things they lived and went through and stuff. And all of a sudden, you just helped me realize that there is a sense of belonging in that level of connection that I hadn't really put two and two together before. So thank you, my anthropological friend.
I love that so much. I know we should all go to New Zealand and stay in a hut. Go into the marae and learn some Kiwi language, Maori. One more share, you guys, before we go to the last idea, because it's so important. We talk about culture and how we treat our elders and connection and community. So again, in Okinawa, there's this word called kajimaya, and it translates as windmill, and it's a reference to the cyclical nature of life. And this is what they do and how they treat their elders. So when they turn 97 years old, they throw them a party, like a celebration. So it's the opposite maybe of like a sweet 16, right? Or a quinceañera, or for men, they're coming into manhood, right? It's to say, we honor you because we know you've been through enough of the cycles of experience, gathering wisdom along the way, returning finally to the innocence of childhood. And some of them, they put their pictures on walls in the communities. And I just say, let's do that here. Let's honor our elders. Let's understand the wealth of information and wisdom and insights they have to share with us if we will only pause enough to listen. 97 years old, my friends. Let's celebrate together, okay? So with that, let's just go ahead. Let's move into our big idea number 3, which is going to be this idea of purpose creates a life worth living. We're just talking about purpose. So let's go into what, again, we've been talking about what the Okinawans call ikigai. Everybody's probably heard of it, right? A reason for being or for living, for getting up in the morning. In Nicoya, they call it plan de vida, or like a life plan. So basically, what is our reason to wake up each morning? You know, researchers have found that individuals with a strong sense of purpose often experience better health outcomes and greater resilience. And there are some studies that suggest that people with a strong sense of purpose may live up to 7 years longer than those without one. So purpose isn't just up here. It's not just philosophical. It's connected, sending messages, and it's biological. It's also social. Purpose is practical. It gives direction. So they also connect the idea of how purpose can be connected to how we contribute. Service creates meaning, the way that we can be a part of society to sustain not only our vitality, but the vitality of our home and community. So the reflection from this is, for you, what gets you out of bed in the morning? What's your reason for waking up in the morning? So ikigai, a reason to wake up in the morning. Reflecting for a moment in your morning, what calls you forward into the day?
You know, this idea is, well, it's big for me because I was faced with a moment many years ago where I didn't want to have to engage with life, you know. And frankly, I would have to say that once you, I don't know, make that shift, make that determination, make that connection with life itself, there is a somatic experience that can come from choosing life. You know, I've had a couple of experiences in my own family and in my own personal sense of purpose, that in the moment that you choose life, when you could choose not life, or you could choose lesser life, there's an energy and there's a somatic experience that comes with that is life-giving, life-sustaining. And I think that's got to be what a little bit, I don't know that I know ikigai, but I imagine that there's something to that, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. And we remember the concept that when we're talking about purpose and meaning, it doesn't have to be the grand purpose, but the everyday meaning. Remember that we talked about early in the books with Viktor Frankl and his idea of what's our daily duty? What am I here, uniquely here, to serve and offer the world, whether as a parent or in your job or in your community? Today, the purpose, that could be my daily purpose. And if we live today, that connects us to tomorrow, which connects us to a broader, bigger meaning and purpose. And so in our unique way, to feel that calling of what am I here to contribute?
Yeah, this is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Really. I mean, I'm just thinking about this as you're both speaking, you know, and how when I think of purpose in this contemporary context, cultural context, it could be, you know, my net worth. You know, my purpose of like building net worth, you know, or as Colin mentioned, you know, a somatic experience. Well, that belies embodiment. When I think of embodiment, embodying purpose, I think of my grandfather, whom I, you know, and how he led a very purposeful life, but also, you know, there was a piety to it, like just a very pious man. And he had a business. It wasn't flourishing. He, you know, but what was flourishing was his, you know, his commitment to community, going to the temple, helping families out, helping his own family out, you know, and there was just a very simple, he was a very simple, pious man. I don't think he was a great business, you know, leader. He was a leader, though. I think not that he was looking to lead, but just in terms of, you know, personally, he was led by something bigger. Mm-hmm. And I think that was like an inner purpose. And I think he embodied that. I think that's when, Colin, when you were sharing that beautiful share, and thank you for doing that. It reminded me of like that, embodiment. So thank you so much, guys. So much to think about, and really grateful for it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And, we talked about in the beginning about these people in these communities, in these blue zones, didn't set out to become centenarians. It just happened, except for Singapore. So you guys, we're not going to do another big idea, but in the book, Blue Zone 2.0 is all about Singapore and how the purpose of Singapore at a certain point, when they realized they're this tiny island nation, and in order to survive, they had to give themselves a purpose. And so they said, we're gonna look to being number one in healthy life expectancy and have the world's lowest rate of cardiovascular mortality. So they set out to create an environment in which their people can thrive, have a purpose, be connected. And many people will say it's highly overregulated to the point where you're not allowed to litter or spit. You can get jailed for doing things like that. But, the gain on that is that everyone is assured a subsistence level of living. They will have a house. They will have healthcare. They will have education. So what are our values? So dive into that on, purposeful environment that will make it easy for longevity and health span. I seriously want to go to Singapore, you guys. That's my next thing. I just want to go. It's amazing. They have a master plan for healthy living as a nation, my friends. And for someone who has a master's in urban planning, that's super enticing. That's just
my God, I never knew that about you. You've got a master's in urban planning?
Yeah.
Oh my God. The things I learn about you humans. You two are amazing humans. You know that, right?
Right back at you, dude. Okay.
Right back at you. Wow. Doing something, on purpose.
At the national level.
At the national level. On purpose. Yeah, I'll go with you.
Okay.
Let's go.
Let's do it.
If you go, do not spit.
We will be in spit jail. All right, you guys, we're coming up on time. Let's review some of the ideas we covered today. And again, we can't cover the whole book, but we're just giving you a highlight, hoping to give you some ideas of, is this a book you want to dive into? So the ideas we reviewed today are health happens in community, right? This is not a solo journey. Also environment, the cues that are around us, the people, they're stronger than our willpower. So let's get smart about building those environments that support us in our healthy, easier choices, right? And then purpose, little purpose, big purpose creates a life worth living. And flourishing, my friends, is something we create together. So let's have those in mind as we share our bonus slide on the power of 9. This is a cool chapter in the book, one of the best, where he takes all the common things that happen in all of the blue zones and shares the practices around them. So you can just take a quick snapshot of these to see what you might look into. And the remarkable thing here is that no single factor explains longevity. It's a combination that matters, which reinforces what we discovered in our book last time on Eat, Move, Sleep with Tom Rath, right? So it's all coming together. So pick one, explore it, dive in. Again, get the book to find out the details on the power of 9. And my friends will share the 10 Blue Zone experiments. The 3 main categories we're going to look at are community, environment, and purpose. So again, don't do them all, but just look at these and pick one. Maybe you want to look at community, sharing a meal with someone. Or maybe you want to look at your environment. Maybe taking a walk during lunch or having a walking meeting at work, putting fruit out where you can see it. What will make it easier for you to make that healthy choice a no-brainer? And then purpose. Writing your purpose statement, volunteering, reflecting on what gives life meaning. So again, don't do them all, just pick one. So we'd love for you to read more, share more, and live more intentionally. And from moving from insight into action, we just end with what's one thing that you were inspired from today's book and discussion that you might want to start, a new habit? And what's one thing maybe that you might want to stop? So just considering that, that's how we would love to move from insight into action as we cultivate and create those healthy lifestyles so we can more fully thrive. So we want to thank you. We want to invite you to stay connected. Make sure that you share this with others that might like some of these discussions as we're wrapping up today's discussion. If you've enjoyed the discussions, please be sure to invite others. Join our private WhatsApp group if you want to get some book reviews, you want to get our reflection worksheets or links to our previous chats. So one of the goals here is not simply to read more books, it's to create an ongoing conversation around the ideas in these books that help us live with greater vitality, awareness, meaning, and flourishing. So with that, I want to thank you for joining us today. Let me circle back to our beautiful co-host today, to circle around one more time and see what landed with you. What's one of the things that you're going to take away from today's discussion?
Well, for me, it's that I have a community here. This is a community for me. Yeah, seriously. No, Maggie, I got to tell you, the realization is that all the things that we talked about that you get from community, purpose, intention, support, insight, I get that here. And it makes me very happy to know that. I'm very grateful because, there's so much evidence that people, not just in America, but in modern society, loneliness is a scourge. There are people who don't have people, and I've never met either one of you in person. I hope to someday, but I feel a sense of community here that is a great blessing. And the other thing too, Urchana, you've really helped me realize that my culture, the culture of my family, both sides, both the Maori and the Mormon, I guess you'd call it. I'm grateful for them in a way that maybe I wasn't before today. That there is my maternal grandfather lived to be 96. And he was like you were talking, Urchana, simple man, pious man, dedicated to his community, served, in his church and in his neighborhood. And I'm filled with a lot of gratitude right now. I'm really grateful for this experience, Maggie. I love your brightness and your enthusiasm to help people. And I feel blessed by it. So thank you.
So awesome to have you here, Colin. Thank you for always bringing your ideas and your love and your culture and your perspective. So appreciate you. Urchana, what about you? What are your final ideas? Anything?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to echo what, Colin said, and so grateful. And thank you for making this a happy place. This is my happy place. I just love coming here and yeah, I mean, in the sense of community and belonging, it's so lovely and it is a blessing. And I'm grateful to you, Maggie. And the fact that we get to do this around, the community of books and authors. And then we get to spread that, right? I mean, and thanks to you and Colin and, really, and Gordon, who's not here, but, just that, and the community of authors, just that brilliance and the fact that you're amplifying it and that the the service, I'm just so humbled by your service, Maggie. I agree with what Colin's saying. Wow. It's incredible.
Thank you. And thank you guys for being here. I mean, I would read book. I am reading books every single day. That's my new health habit for myself. And I love it. But we joined here together with the love of books and wisdom and our culture and how everything is wisdom until we embody it and we apply it. And so what I love about this group is that we share and we explore and we're open growth minded together. So what's happening with our group is just a glimpse of what's possible in other homes, other communities. And we invite you, if you'd love to join us for our live chats, scan the QR code, get the Zoom, and share your ideas. You don't have to read the books. The idea is learn about the ideas, see if this is the book you want to get. I would recommend it. This is definitely a coffee table book that I want to have. I have it, but I want you to have it too, because one book can change a life. And if we start to share ideas and learn from each other, everything just gets better. So that's what we're here to do, my friends. And with that, I want to thank you, because that's one of the things I love about these Cafecito Chats, is that we actually get to be together. We get to share and bring our lived experiences through these conversations. And every week I'm reminded that the wisdom isn't just found in these pages of the books. It really, truly is found in the experiences, the perspectives, and the stories, the beautiful stories that you shared today and always, that you bring to the table. Thank you both for helping us explore this book and the ideas together. And so, final sign off. Next week, we invite you to join us for our next book, which is The How of Happiness by Sonia Lyubomirsky, as we explore the science of happiness and the practices that support lasting well-being. So until next time, my friends, keep reading, keep smiling, keep reflecting and sharing. And remember, here in Cafecito Chat, we pause not to stop, but to pivot toward what matters. Thanks so much again for joining, my friends. We'll see you next time.